Okay, so picture this. It's mid-October 2025, and that fragile calm we've seen in the U.S. China relationship, yeah, it just completely shattered. Without any warning, the entire global economy got pushed right to the edge of a massive trade war. But this wasn't just a repeat of what we've seen before. Oh no, this time, the actual rules of the game were about to change.
So it all kicks off on October 11th. Donald Trump drops this absolute bombshell, a 100% tariff hike. Can you imagine? The news sent this immediate shockwave ripping through global markets. Everyone was just bracing for impact, thinking, here we go again, another devastating trade war.
And then, get this, less than 48 hours later, this happens. A complete reversal, a total 180. Trump posts that everything's going to be fine, that neither side wants a recession. I mean, the whiplash from that was just stunning.
So you've got to be asking yourself, right? What on earth happened in that tiny window to cause such a dramatic flip-flop? Well, the answer isn't just in those few hours between the two posts, but really, it's in the weeks that led up to this whole mess.
Look, this tariff whiplash, it wasn't random. It was a really high-stakes power move, and it was timed just days before these huge trade talks were supposed to kick off in Kuala Lumpur. To understand the reversal, you first have to get a handle on the pressure campaign that came right before it.
All right, to really get what's going on with Trump's sudden U-turn, we've actually got to rewind the clock a few weeks, because this whole thing didn't just start with the tariff threat. Nope, it began with a really carefully planned U.S. pressure campaign, one designed to give them as much leverage as possible heading into those talks.
So in the span of less than 2 weeks, the U.S. makes 3 huge moves, one after the other. First, the Department of Commerce rolls out this powerful new rule. Then, the U.S. Trade Representative goes after China's shipping industry. And to top it off, the Treasury slaps sanctions on 16 Chinese companies. This was the classic maximum pressure playbook turned up to 11.
Okay, so this 50% penetration rule, this was the really clever and frankly disruptive part. It basically meant that if the U.S. sanctioned a Chinese parent company, any subsidiary it owned over 50% of, anywhere in the world, was also instantly sanctioned. All of a sudden, you've got German manufacturers or Brazilian suppliers having to do these expensive audits on all their Chinese partners, or else risk getting cut off from the U.S. market themselves. It basically weaponized uncertainty.
But here's the thing. This time, Beijing's response was totally different. Instead of the usual delay or some measured reaction, China unleashed this incredibly coordinated counterpunch. And the speed and precision, it was something we'd never really seen before, targeting America's biggest weak spots.
Literally, on the same day the U.S. announces its sanctions, China starts firing back. First, they hit the U.S. high-tech sector with new controls on rare earths. The very next day, they match the U.S. port fees and launch a probe into American chip giant Qualcomm, a company that gets like half its money from China. This was swift, it was precise, and it was hitting from all sides.
Now, of all those moves, the one that really truly changed the entire game was rare earths. This move went right for the foundation of America's advanced military and tech sectors. It was a direct hit on a critical vulnerability.
You know, a lot of people think China's power here comes from just having the most rare earth mines, but that's actually a huge misconception. The real story, the true leverage, isn't about what's in the ground. It's about controlling the incredibly complex industrial chain you need to actually process it.
And this right here, it shows you exactly what I'm talking about. Sure, China has about a third of the world's raw reserves. That's a lot, but it's not a monopoly. But look at the other side. They control over 90% of the global capacity to actually process those ores into something useful. See, digging the rocks out of the ground is one thing, but refining them, that's a whole different ballgame, and that is the choke point.
And when you look at it visually like this, it's even more stark. I mean, wow. When it comes to that critical step of processing, China has a near total lock on the global market. Get this, even the ore from America's only rare earth mine has to be shipped to China to be refined.
So what are these things anyway, these rare earths? Well, they're not just one thing, but a group of 17 elements that are all chemically similar. People call them industrial vitamins because you only need tiny amounts, but they are absolutely essential and pretty much irreplaceable for modern technology.
And when I say they're essential, I'm not kidding. They're critical for the guidance systems in F-35s and nuclear submarines. They're the key ingredient in the powerful magnets that make electric vehicle motors and wind turbines work. You can't even make advanced computer chips without them.
Just to give you a sense of scale, a single F-35 fighter jet, the absolute backbone of the U.S. Air Force, needs about 400 kilograms of this stuff. So this isn't just about the economy. It's a massive national security issue.
Now you'll notice China was really careful with its wording here. Their official line wasn't an outright ban. The Ministry of Commerce said, hey, controls don't equal a ban. This frames their leverage not as a light switch that's just on or off, but more like a faucet, one they can tighten or loosen whenever they want, which makes it a super powerful bargaining chip in any negotiation.
So what does all of this crazy rapid escalation and then de-escalation, what does it all mean? Well, this wasn't just another tariff spat. It was a signal that we're in a new kind of war, one that's driven by a huge shift in China's confidence and its strategy.
So why is China acting more assertively all of a sudden? What's changed? Well, for one, its economy is way more resilient now, with new trade partners that make it less dependent on the West. Two, it's having real breakthroughs in its own critical choke point technologies, like advanced chips. But maybe most importantly, after years of this back and forth, Beijing knows the U.S. maximum pressure playbook inside and out. The element of surprise? It's gone.
And this, right here, is probably the most important takeaway from this whole thing. The conflict is evolving. The old tariff war was kind of a blunt instrument, right? A fight over the price of stuff. This new rule-based war is so much more sophisticated. This is a fight to write the actual regulations that control global supply chains and decide who even gets access to critical tech.
So those rules we've been talking about, the 50% penetration rule from the U.S. and China's rare earth controls, these are the new weapons. They aren't just policies, they're strategic moves on a global chessboard, and they're designed to completely reshape the economic battlefield.
And all of this leaves us with one final and really crucial question. For decades, the U.S. and its allies pretty much wrote the rules for global business. But as this fight shifts from a war over goods to a war over the rules themselves, you have to ask, who's holding the pen now, and what is the instruction manual for our global future going to look like?